like we've answered all your questions at this stage, at least the ones that we can. So today we're gonna I just want to start off that we need to be prepared mentally and organizationally on what's gonna happen at camp. Camp will be different, but it will be fun. We will be impactful, but it will be, we need to temper our expectations of what we've experienced in the past, because we're going to notice differences, but we shouldn't let that get us down, because we can still have a fantastic experience together. We're going to talk about why we do camp. We're going to go over the guidelines that have come up, show some examples of what you can expect from summer camp, discuss how best to prepare. And we have a change in the payment deadline incentive, what we used to call the free t-shirt, and we'll talk about that and make sure that we answer all your questions. Next slide. I think it's important that we make sure that we all remember why camp is so important, right? Because getting outside in a safe, creative, and educational way, and cooperative living groups, and outside of their natural habitat, if you will, can contribute, to their physical and mental, spiritual, and social growth. And as we all know, getting out into nature is something that our kids desperately need. And also having some sort of interaction with others is critical to their social development. So, and again, being outside and camping contributes to good health. It helps our scouts develop self-reliance and resourcefulness, which we're going to do a lot with. It enhances spiritual growth. And we're not talking just about religion here. We're just talking about connection to things greater than themselves. You can't watch a sunrise in the morning or look out of a vast ocean or see the majestic mountains or the intricate nature of plants and fractals and things like that without inspiration on many different levels. It also contributes to our social development as we interact with each other and just figure out how best to have a peaceful interaction with each other to contribute to each other's betterment. And we get to experience citizenship training and that personal growth. And also camping teaches teamwork and leadership skills and the patrol method. We're going to be able to really lean into the patrol method this summer, especially for the Scout BSA camps. And we want to talk a little bit about that and make sure that we lean in and everybody is ready to not miss out on those fantastic opportunities for our patrols to be stronger and to strengthen our troops by our interactions, by the way things have changed this summer. We stand a greater chance of being able to have a greater impact on patrol unity and your troop overall function by how camp is going to be organized. And we'll talk more about that. So go ahead, next slide. I think it's important to realize that if you want to pity us, that'd be great. We really could appreciate it. If you want to pray for us, that would be really happy too. But there's a lot of factors involved for us to be able to operate camp, and a lot of groups that we need to work with. We just received the state guidelines a little over a week ago, and it took some time to eat those up and try to interpret them. What we found holes and add a lot of questions and not a lot of places to go to for that, which is why we have our Council COVID task force. And we are able to meet as a task force next Thursday. And that task force is made up of doctors and physicians and board members and the like, so that we can evaluate how we operate our camps. In this particular task force, we invited all of our camp directors to attend. So we ensured that these things were going to, that all factors were being developed. Also, the Center for Disease Control recently put out their guidelines for operating camps that went into consideration as well, and helping fill the gaps that we run into. The American Camping Association has an environmental team that's come in and put some wonderful guidelines, especially like how do you do swimming, or how do you do activities in the outdoors and maintain COVID safety standards. The BSA also has national camp standards that we need to operate for safety. And then finally, the Guide to Safe Scouting and our youth protection guidelines are still there, right? And then finally, remember that after all of that, a camp director has to look at all the guidelines and all their suggestions and all that and ask themselves, can we do this? How do we do that? How do we get to the logistics? Just because we're allowed to do a thing doesn't mean that it makes sense in a controlled factor with what we have ahead of us and our facility demands and staffing demands and all that to be able to offer something. So scheduling, logistics are all about what camp director is about. And so those will play a good part in that as well. Okay, next slide. All right, now we use this a lot of times, but I cannot share with you the math I did on how to determine the potential risk factor of serious or catastrophic effect from attending summer camp. But let's say you can do the math. So that if you wash your hands, if that means that if you just by washing your hands, that you're 25% less likely to get COVID because your hands are clean than if you don't wash your hands. All right. And then imagine if you're vaccinated and you're 95% less likely to get COVID, right? So you take the 25% just by washing your hands and you add 95% to that, right? And then you add behavioral quarantine, which means you're not going to be around a lot of other people with potential affecting you prior to camp. You add that percentage in there. And we're only going to interact in a small group throughout the entire week and not interact with others. Well, let's say that's like 80% effective from preventing you from getting COVID, right? Well, that adds to that, right? So you're 80% of 95, that's 80, and it just continues to build on itself until you get to, once you're able to accomplish everything, the likelihood of somebody getting COVID at camp, if we did everything, is immensely low. And that is our goal, is that we do not want to spread COVID. And if we do, we want to maintain control. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And that's what the state guidelines are all about. And that's what the CDC guidelines are all about, is that we want to prevent anybody being infected. But if someone does get infected, we want to make sure that we can have containment and not spread that infection to a wider group. Chris, do you have anything you want to share on that particular one? You've done a lot of work there.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly, we all have our own personal responsibility, like the graphic shows, and the camp responsibility as well. And it's that balance. Something that was shared with me recently is, if everybody shows up to camp healthy, I mean, there go all your odds right there, that you're not COVID won't be spreading around. There's no guarantee of that. And so within that risk, it's making sure that we're doing our best. We're being prepared. Gosh, those would be great mottos for an organization with youth and stuff. But that's exactly what we're trying to do, is to keep that risk as low as possible, to be able to open up camp as widely as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. So up until now, literally up until today, all of you have only ever received our working assumptions as to how camp's going to operate. And finally, being May 5th of the, with 50 some days left to go before camp, depending on which camp and who you're going to talk to, we can tell you what to expect. We can't answer every possible question because we're still developing some of our logistics, but we're going to lean in here, and here's the things that we know. And before I get into these, is that what I'm sharing with you is the what is. It is still possible that the state could come back and make adjustments to our guidelines that we would share with you. Chances are they wouldn't make the guidelines tougher. They're more likely to make them easier on us as we move forward. And that would trip a conversation with our COVID task force and communication to you to say, hey, listen, we've decided that we can do some things a little bit less than we were planning on. But I don't want anybody to depend on that. I think it's important that you read this for what it is at face value and plan on what you hear today, and assume that this is what we're going to do. And some of these things you're going to have a lot of what ifs. So I'm going to do my level best to handle them. But at the end of this, you're going to have my email address, you have Chris's email address, and you'll be able to reach out to us specifically. And pretty soon, you'll be able to work directly with your camp directors on your specific in-camp needs when you get there. So let's jump into this. All right, Chris, go ahead. Let's go. Next slide. There we go. All right, screening. Come to camp safe. All right, we want to arrive safe. So we're talking about pre-camp self-quarantine. So this is not isolation. We're not asking you to not leave your house for 14 days. All right, I want to be very clear. When we're talking about quarantining and behavioral quarantine, we're talking about the 2 weeks prior to coming to camp, participate in only low-risk activities. Right, so you need to go to the store, right? Or if you need to interact with your cohort, if you need to do limited activities for what you're doing, but don't go to a family reunion and intermix with, people from all over the country without masks and social distancing, right? You're putting yourself, that would be an example of not behavioral quarantine, right? So if you have to interact with others, make sure you're social distancing, wearing a mask and doing those things. Also, you need to monitor your symptoms, right? We want to make sure that you have no COVID symptoms prior to arrival, prior to coming. If you ended up getting sick, then it's important that you get yourself tested to ensure that you're okay. We're not going to require that, but we're going to ask you if you had COVID symptoms prior to camp, and that could, depending on put you in a different risk level of participation. And again, you don't want to have.
Can I jump in for just a second on that, Todd?
Let me just finish the last bullet point, then why don't you go ahead and run of that. Yeah. And then we want to make sure you have no contact with infected individuals for those 14 days, right? It all makes sense. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, and I would just add to this that this is a potential weak point in our system, is that how well and thoroughly do our troop and pack and den leaders communicate this deeply into their packs and troops. If we show up on the day of and all of a sudden say, hey, did you have anything for the last 2 weeks? That's a weakness, right? So they need to know as far in advance as possible that this is coming, plan ahead. So those 2 weeks before you come to camp, you're chilling.
I'm answering it in the text, and there's a question about quarantining, and we're going to talk our vaccinations. Those of you that are vaccinated has significantly reduced your ability to have serious issues from COVID and risk of death. You're far more likely to get eaten by a tornado or lightning bolt than die of COVID after you, given our mitigation things, if you come to camp vaccinated. So we recommend everybody come to camp vaccinated that can be, because your risk level goes way down from serious catastrophic effect. It does not prevent you, however, at this stage from being a potential carrier. I just want to let you know that we're recognizing that there is a risk for that. It's minor, and we don't know. The CDC has even admitted that they're not exactly sure what to expect there. They just have not seen enough information to make a good recommendation on it. So we're erring on that side of conservative nature. Okay, prior to attending camp, you as a leader will need to make sure that everyone coming, adults and anybody coming to camp, has been screened to ensure that they have not come in contact with an infected individual, that they have not had COVID symptoms, and have been able to behavioral quarantine and stay away from large groups without a mask. Okay, you need to ensure that, and don't bring people to camp that may be sick. That's just the way we need to make sure that happens. When you come to camp, we're going to do that. So you need to make sure that if someone, if someone comes to camp and they say, yes, I was exposed to somebody 8 days ago, right? Then you're going to fall into the exposure category and may not be able to come into camp, for another 6 days. Right. So you might as well know that that there's specific guidelines. If you've been exposed, then you can't come. Right. So just know that. Camp and then we and then again we already talked about vaccination, and then you as an adult, your cohort will need to do a daily campsite health check, right? And that may involve taking temperatures. We haven't figured that out, but you have to fill it out on a log, and this is required by the state. You have to log every day that you have checked everybody to ensure that they're not having any COVID symptoms and that they're in good physical condition to be able to operate in a group that day, right? That's everybody, state, CDC, everybody says that you need to do that. Okay, so and then after camp, you'll be sent information to let us know more about. You let us know if anybody's come down sick after you've left, right? And also we'll ask for another review of your experience. All right, so that's the screening place. Come to camp healthy. Do not bring people who have been infected. Don't bring people who are sick. If somebody has been sick, but they're not, but they're feeling better, see if you can't get them tested before you come to ensure that, because we'll have to keep an eye on them for a few days, depending on when they no longer hit symptoms. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we talk about cohorting. This cohorting is a containment plan. So the pre-screening is a mitigation step. The base plan for cohorting is the containment. So the important piece is we want to make sure that if right now there's one in, let's say, so let's say that if you took the total percentage of people in the state who have COVID right now and down to the total number of people you have in camp, there may be a 50% chance that you'll have one person in camp that has COVID, right? Well, that person is going to exist in a cohort and should only, in that rare circumstance where that person has it, will only interact with that cohort at all. And so we want to make sure that, and our cohort size is going to be 10 or 12. And so it's important that you know that you as a leader will need to do your best to assign those cohorts. And let's say you're bringing 13 to camp. All right, we may let that cohort be 13, we may not. So, I mean, our camp directors will work with you ahead of time, but you'll need to know ahead of time what your cohorts are going to be before you come, because of the requirements of traveling together and being their own group unit for the entire time. So we have a little bit of flexibility, 8 to 12 or so of a cohort size. All right. And so and adults cohort with scouts, but they do not count towards the cohort count. So if you have 10 to 12 youth and 2 or 3 adults, all right, you're good. I mean, the adult count does not count towards the cohort size based on the state guidelines, but the adults must cohort with the scouts. I suppose adults could choose to cohort with just the adults, but that might, kind of be a challenge for your own supervision. But the idea being is that that if you're in a cohort, then that means that you can hang out with them, you can travel with them, that means that you can eat with them, and that means that you can have regular interaction with them. But it also means that you cannot have regular interaction with people outside of your cohort. Again, so think of, if you're a small troop, you need 2 adult leaders, for your cohort. Just, so let's say you only bring 6, 8 kids, you're going to need to have 2 adult leaders because that's just the rules. If for some reason you're a Cub Scout pack or whatever, and you're come a really small group and you're not going to have 2 adult leaders, let us know and we'll see about linking you in with another registered adult leader at camp and make you guys buddies. But that'll be something we'll have to deal with. But you need 2 adult leaders at all scouting activities as part of the BSA rules. That, by the way, that rule is for the entirety of camp, not per cohort. So if you're a troop, you're bringing 3 cohorts, which is this in here, you only need 2 registered leaders per the entire troop, but you need at least 1 adult per cohort to ensure that there's supervision. Now that adult may not have one-on-one interaction with any scout, but they can be assigned, they can eat with them, they can hang with them, they can travel with them, and the like. And again, female cohorts will need female adult leadership to be able to do anything. Every adult, and we don't have it finished yet, we'll need to sign a COVID champion agreement. That means every adult will have a responsibility to maintain the supervision and activity to ensure that our COVID guidelines are being enforced at all times. As far as the state is concerned, all adult leaders are considered staff. And so because of that we're going to train you and have you sign the agreement, because you will have the responsibility for supervision and to assurance of the COVID guidelines. Okay, and then again, cohorts share a sleeping area and eating area. Now you won't stay in the same tent with them unless they're your own child, and that would be for Cub Scouts. But Scout BSA, you can't stay with your own child in a tent unless you have very special situation, and we talk about that on separate. And when you'll know if that's an issue for you. For the most part, adults and youth have no situation where they can stay together as a troop. And even with that, our cohorts will still maintain masked and physical distancing throughout camp. And we're going to talk about those mitigation things as we go. At this point, I'm going to start because cohorting is a big thing. Chris is where are we at with questions? You want to hit me with a couple before I move on to the mixing comment?
I'll start on one there, Todd. One is, so somebody does the pre-screening well, does it carefully, does it correctly, and has kids who screen themselves or adults who screen themselves out prior to camp, but they've gone ahead and paid all their fees before camp. What are we doing about that?
No matter what, you'll get everything back by $100, no matter what. But then you will fill out the refund request form, and our refund request committee will most likely give you more than that back. Last year, what we did is that we gave 100% back for anybody that did not come, that was not able to come based to COVID reasons, and that was our plan. And my guess is that will be our policy as it is, but you'll need a refund request form to be able to execute that. And so just know that. Ron Stanky, I noticed that you mentioned about this. Currently, the state guidelines and the CDC guidelines do not match with regard to when you can wear a mask and when you can't wear a mask. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But the only time you can't, you can take off your mask is when you're outdoors 6 feet away, when you're sleeping, when you're showering, or when you're swimming. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But yes, there is a discrepancy there. 13 scouts will be able to stay together most likely. I mean, at some point, Carol, we'll figure that out. Once we start, that will be a part of the puzzle as we get into it, and your camp director and you will have a wonderful opportunity to talk about how you want to split up cohorts. Probably after we get the leader guides out to you here mid-month, we'll talk about that. At this point, we don't have any upper limit. Please, as far as adults per cohort, in some cases, you have youth that have special needs that require more supervision. I understand that. In Cub Scouts, there's going to be probably almost 50% adults per youth in a cohort, right? So we're not going to adjudicate that, but ask yourself this: do you need as many adults as you're bringing? If you do, no one's going to question you. If you don't, if you're doing that because everybody wants, to camp, then we'll be good to go. Let's see. Masks are not required while sleeping. And so I answered that one. All right, I think I see. Okay, so I think we're good. I'm just going to double check here. As part of pre-camp, low risk activity, would you consider as a scout attending another local summer camp, day camp acceptable or not? So in theory, that would not count towards behavioral quarantining. And I would recommend they do a COVID test before they come to the other camp. We're not making that a guideline, but that would be the smart thing to do. And a COVID test will cost somewhere around $12 for 2 of them if you buy them in the pharmacy, and that's a rapid antigen test, and that's what we recommend. So, and I think we're good. I think I've answered I'm gonna move on now to the next slide, and Bryce, we're gonna answer your question here in a second. So here we go. All right, everybody, look at this slide. This is the one slide where we're going to be a little, if you want to find a wonderful opportunity to drive all the way to camp, hang out for a day, and drive all the way home, have your scouts disregard the cohort mixing protocols. We will have 0 tolerance for mixing of cohorts. All right, we have to. So if we discover mixing of cohorts, we will deal with it very seriously, and most likely will send individuals and or entire cohorts and or units home. And I'll tell you why. If someone's infected, those in the cohort with that infected individual should be the only ones that have that potential exposure. And we're still going to try to mitigate within that cohort, but that cohort's going to be sleeping together and interacting with each other, and they're going to have a higher risk of spreading the infection than any other place. Right. So if we have an infection, and the state and county must determine if we have containment. And if we have a mixing of cohorts and we have lost containment, then the county and state could come back to us and close our camp. Not only for that week, send everybody home immediately, right? If they don't believe, and possibly the week after us, or they could choose to close the entire camp if they believe that we cannot maintain control or containment. So it's one thing if we have an instance where somebody gets sick or somebody has, because someone could be exposed prior unknowingly showing up to the camp. They could have done a COVID test prior to camp, still not being showing with COVID, but all of a sudden get sick at camp, test positive, right? And there's just no way to control that. But if that person not only gets the people in their cohort sick, but other cohorts around them, and all of a sudden we have a spread event, all right, not only is Channel 2 News going to be parked at our front door, we're not going to be operating. So I cannot emphasize more how important it is for us to keep camp open for everybody and make sure that our cohorts do not mix. And so we're going to do our level best to do that. All right, next slide. Food service, yeah. We're still working on some of this logistics because the state requirements still require that inside a dining hall, everybody must be 6 feet apart. So we're doing, we're getting out the protractor and the thing and mapping things out and trying to figure out how best we do that. You can guarantee that we're going to at least split the camp into half, and half the camp will eat at one time and half the camp will eat at another time, unless you're at Camp Baldwin. And Camp Baldwin, which we'll talk about Insight, you'll see little change. But the food will need to be pre-plated. So imagine you walk up into the area, you wash your hands, and you come upon, there's somebody that says, COVID champion, where are you? Did everybody wash their hands? Yes, they did. You may enter. And then you enter and you go to your particular tables for your cohort and you sit, all wearing, and up until then, you're all wearing your face masks. And then you get up when your table's called and you go in and you got your tray and someone puts a plate on your thing with your food and a cup on it with your drink. And then you walk back to your table, sit down, take off your mask and start eating. Once the food is over, somebody at that table will stack up everything and a cart will be available, and one by one, every table will put their stuff off the cart. Then they'll be asked to leave by cohort, and somebody will be asked to spray down and wipe down your table, and then the next group will come in. That's kind of how you could expect an in-person event to happen. We're still working on those logistics. Again, understand that hand washing is more than required. It's essential to this process. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, someone gets sick at camp with COVID symptoms. What's going to happen? All right, so what's going to happen is the sick individual is quarantined. That means they won't be able to participate in the program. They'll need to hang out and be sick. They'll need to move out of their sleeping area into another quarantine sleeping area. And we will provide a rapid antigen test to see if they are test positive for COVID. While we're waiting for that test, the rest of the cohort will just need to restrict their activities, but will not need to quarantine. They just will be done with activity until we get that COVID test done. Again, we are planning to provide rapid antigen tests that will just take a short period of time to answer those questions. So the sooner that we know that somebody has got COVID symptoms, the sooner that we can run that test, and the sooner that we can determine on the next steps. If the individuals in the individuals again will just need to be very protective while we wait. If the COVID test is negative, then the cohort can move on. Go to your program area, have fun, enjoy, stay together. The quarantine person will be maintained quarantine until the symptoms subside. So sick people get to stay sick until they get better, right? So somebody wakes up and they just got a small temperature, or whatever the things that are there. We're going to isolate that individual until they're feeling better. If our test comes back positive, then we will follow the COVID infection protocols, which are next. Okay, next slide. Let's talk about what that is. Okay, so now someone tests positive for COVID. Immediately, we need to contact the County Department of Health, right? We will do that. And then we will then isolate the individual. That means that person will be removed from the cohort and be moved to a completely different area where they will be isolated with little or no contact with other people until we hear back from the health department as to what to do. Again, the health department will be in the driver's seat at that point. The efforts will be made to remove the infected individual from camp. And then we'll do contract tracing will be completed. And again, notification will be made to those who may have become in contact, which is important that we maintained sanctity of our cohorts and there was no mixing, right? That we maintain containment. Again, the cohort will be quarantined and restricted from participating in any program until cleared by the county health department. which means you won't need to leave. And the health department may ask us to test you, but we'll be up to them. I have no idea. I meet with the health department to kind of go over scenarios, but that may change. They become, the minute that somebody has COVID at camp, the health department will be in charge, and we'll decide what we do from there. Okay, next slide. All right, so this has come up. I have concerns about those of you coming from out of council that are specifically if you're in a plane or a train or public transportation, because if you have somebody who has been exposed to somebody with COVID, they won't let you on a plane, you know, and they won't, and they'll probably let a vaccinated person on, but they won't let an unvaccinated person get on a plane or a train or all that stuff. So now you're stuck quarantining until so many days, you know, till you can do that. So you won't be able to do that at camp. Now, at this point, we have a couple ideas of some alternatives that we can execute, but you as a, now we're going to do everything we can to be supportive, but that will be to support finding solutions to you with that individual out of camp, because they will not be able to stay in camp. Just make sure I say that. And so, you know, there are places like Motel 6 and other places where we can send them. We may even be able to find another place in the council where we can put you that, but I wouldn't plan for that. I would just, you know, sit down, come up with mitigation steps. If you're getting on a plane to come to camp, you need to be prepared for that alternative. What are you going to do? If you're driving, you know, 12, 15 hours to get to camp, all right, you need to figure that out too. Where are you going to take them halfway where you can meet the parent? Right? How are you going to do that? How are you going to get them to a place where if I was like in Spokane, I'd look maybe for a place in the Tri-Cities that I would want to get to for night one with 2 adults and the kids, so that we can ensure that they're safe or whatever. So it's important that you come up with a contingency plan. Okay, next slide. All right. Working assumptions, again, the cohort program. So now we're going to kind of be talking a little bit about, some things you can expect for programming. If I kind of glanced over the mitigation things, you have to wear a face mask at all times unless you're outdoors more than 6 feet away from anybody. Right? Or you're sleeping, or you're eating, literally eating, or you're in the bathroom or shower. Right? Other than that, you'll be wearing a mask. And so you'll do your best to socially distance throughout the entirety while you're there as well. Okay, so at Cub Scouts, again, we're going to put them in a cohort. And in some cases, you're going to have people from different packs in the same cohort, but they're going to probably interact a lot like, little cohorts within the cohort, depending on their willingness to interact with each other. But that is a little bit of an added risk in some cases, that when you have really small groups, and we may need to assign you with another group, because a system's not going to really work for a group of 2 wandering around, or 4 wandering. At some point, we're going to have to put people from one group with another group in a cohort. That doesn't mean that they need to interact or have close contact. That just means that they'll need to participate in the program together. And impacts will be in that. Again, packs attending, we'll do our best to keep an entire pack together. We're not going to switch up. All right, unless the numbers make sense. And we're going to work with all of you up until that point to ensure that we can do that safely and all that. That's going to be a logistics that we're going to have to work with every reservation on, in the weeks coming up to camp. But you need to be thinking about how do you want to divide yourself up. So again, you're going to attend each area as a cohort on a schedule. So you're not going to be able to say, okay, everybody break, everybody go to where you want to go and have fun. No, the cohort will be going from one activity to another activity to another activity all together, right? And depending on the camp and what areas you go to, when, and how much time is going to be allocated to that area. Those are all factors that are still being somewhat developed. But imagine going from area to area to area and working on a program. Now, we're not going to offer merit badges the same way, and I'm going to talk about merit badges in greater detail, but we're going to offer less. Normally, we offer around 40 merit badges. I think that we're going to be closer to around 20 to 30 merit badges that we're going to offer. However, when I get to merit badges, I want to address that to let you know what's also possible. A kid could still walk away with 9 merit badges if he came to summer camp, but that kid has to be willing to earn 9 merit badges, and there's a lot of things that kid will have to do, and we'll explain that. We're not going to do any camp-wide activities like flag, campfire games, that type of stuff. It's just those are mass events that mixing would happen, and we just don't want to mix cohorts. Again, and we've closed all off-camp outings. So let's go on to the next slide to kind of kick around some things. Here are some of the things that we pretty much decided that we're not going to do, and some of these may come as a surprise. And remember that it's not just because we don't think we can do it safely. It has to do maybe with logistics. You know, we haven't figured out how to get an entire cohort through a program to make that happen. And we may figure it out, but you know, some of these programs require a tremendous amount of staff per participants to have happen as well. And we want to limit that because we don't want to have any close contact between our summer camp staff and you, the campers, or the adults. Because, you know, if a camp staff member gets sick, it's a whole nother issue. And so we have to work even harder to ensure that they don't get sick. I guess, so climbing, blacksmithing, welding, life-saving is one of those things where we just couldn't figure out easily how to do that without having close contact. A lot of the adult trainings will probably not happen because of the tendency for mixing. I'm not saying that we're not going to do it, but I think that we're trying to figure out the logistics on that. Again, I talked about camp-wide activities, you know, roaming around outside of your cohort, again, within reason. I can see how, you know, if you're at Cub Scout camp, you and your kid may want to run to the shower, go, you know, bathe, or not everybody's going to want to go stand in line at the shower or whatever to use it. And there may be things like that. And again, we've closed all the remote whitewater windsurfing and kayaking programs. Now, that said, if you are a unit and you want to do whitewater windsurfing and kayaking with your cohort, we're not saying you can't. We're just not going to offer it at camp. What we would like you to do is schedule that, and we can help you schedule that maybe right after you're done with camp as a kind of going home activity, as an additional activity. Or we can hook you up with these activities outside of our summer camp program. We're just not going to offer them inside our camping program. Okay, next slide. Ooh. Let's see, do I, let me, I'm going to go through the next slide, and then I'm going to try to get to some of these questions. Okay. So the next slide is, what do we get to do? I got here, shoot the rifles, archery, BBs, leatherwork, hikes, stargaze, treasure hunts, ride bikes, mountain boarding, scavenger hunts, art projects, wood projects, swimming and boating, basketry, games, hanging with friends, experience nature, tide pools, trailer first class, comfort course, competition, cooking, riding horses, and all sorts of other things. Right? Cool stuff is going to happen. It's going to be fun. You know, so there are some things that we won't be able to do, but there's not a lot of things that we are going to be able to do, and that's really important. All right, let's go on into merit badges here. Next slide. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that these things aren't going to necessarily be at every camp. You know, for instance, Pioneers has the STEM area, so they're looking at doing some STEM activities. You know, Meriwether tends to do oceanography and something. So there's going to be some limits, but you know, you get an idea. Merit badges are still going to happen at camp. You can get an idea of what's going to be out there and available. However, they're going to happen differently. And so I want to talk about merit badges in specific. right now. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. So Scouts will need to take initiative on merit badges, which means you as adult leaders now need to get prepared and have them get started on their merit badges. All right, because they're going to need to work independently on their merit badges. A good example of this is when I was in high school, and my last merit badge was Citizenship in the Nation. And I had a Citizenship in the Nation counselor who happened to be my civics teacher, right? So I guess in a way he did teach me, but essentially I grabbed the book, I did all the work, and then I just showed up to my teacher and said, here, look at all the things I did, right? And reviewed what I did and signed my merit badge, right? Which is actually the way that merit badges are supposed to happen. Merit badges are not, it's not intended necessarily to be taught by classes. Inherently, a scout wants to take a merit, or is interested in a subject. They get a permission from their scoutmaster. They get the merit badge book and they start working on the activity. They get assigned a merit badge counselor. When they meet with the merit badge counselor, maybe at the beginning to make sure that they understand the merit badge requirements completely. Scout goes and completes the requirements, comes back and shows the merit badge counselor what they've done, and they've completed the merit badge. So in that way, you know, we have a lot of merit badge counselors going to be at Meriwether or Baldwin or Pioneer. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to earn merit badges if they're willing to take the initiative. All right. So what's not going to happen is a scenario where the scout's going to come in and spend a week long in a merit badge where they are going to be able to raise their hand, answer a question, get rid off the requirements. What is probably going to happen is they're going to show up, they're going to sign up for kayaking, and everybody's going to say, did everybody, you know, and they're going to go do a swim test. And then they're going to come back and they're going to say, okay, did everybody know that you need to understand the parts of the paddle and all that? Here's a brief safety orientation. Okay, let's go in and let's show me how you can paddle and capsize your kayak, right? And so there'll be, you know, a little bit of that where they'll have to show those things, but the work will need to be done by the scout. And those people are prepared for that. The scout's going to be enjoy that. And if you're not come prepared for that, you'll get to camp and the scout can start working on that that stuff there while they're at camp, right? And it's the best that they can. And so so and that kind of goes to the next slide, and then I'm going to answer a bunch of these questions. Okay, so so I don't have anybody's schedule ready to go for you, and I'm sorry for that. But imagine that you are in a cohort. So close your eyes and imagine that you and your cohorts. You got Ran and Stimpy and you know Bucky and Piggy and all your friends are in your cohort. By the way, that was more or less my patrol when I was Scouts. And you're going to go, and let's say that I'm going to go to an area. Let's say I'm going to go to nature. And so I know ahead of time we're going to say, okay, we're going to nature. Everybody got your nature merit badge stuff? Yes, we do. All right. And my cohort champion is with me and making sure we've got all of our stuff. Hey, you guys got pencils? You got pens? You got paper? All right, good. All right, let's go. We're going to nature. So we go to nature and you show up and you say, oh, Rat Patrol from Troop 313, you're here. Yeah, we're here. Woo. All right. Well, I'm Joe and this is John and we're your counselors. Come on over here and this is your cohort area. All right. And then I'll sit here and say, okay, how many of you are here to work on mammals? And how many of you are here to work on environmental science? And how many of you are here to work on this? And how many of you work on that? Depending on what the answer is, those two scouts will work with those scouts on those merit badges for the time allotted that they have there until they're done. And chances are that won't be my first time, my only time with them. I'll come back later with them. So I'll get done with that and go, oh, I need to do these other things. So now I got homework, right? I'm gonna leave, come back with homework, and then I come back the next time we can finish that up. All right, so imagine that's kind of what it's gonna look like. But the entire time you'll be socially distant in your cohort at the activity, and your staff member will not get closer than 6 feet from you at any time. right? And so a typical day may look like this. So we get up, and I'm not, Baldwin's going to look a lot similar to what you've normally said. So let's just say that so I get up, and everybody gets up, and we do flag in the campsite. And it's our cohort's term for flags. Everybody else's social distance. Our cohort comes in. We all wash our hands, and we go and we put the flag up and put the flag down. All right, and we put the flag up. Everybody says this Pledge of Allegiance and the Scout Oath and Law and the Outdoor Code, and then we get ready for breakfast. All right, and then cohort by cohort, we wander to the place where food will be done. And everybody will wash their hands. The cohort champion will assure that they're done. They'll go in and eat. And I kind of already explained that. You'll come back out, and then you'll go back to your campsite, awaiting your opportunity to go to your first program activity. Meanwhile, other cohorts are now going to the dining hall to eat, because we have 2 different shifts. Okay. And then it's now our turn to go to our program activities. We go to program activity. Let's say I'm going to go to 1, 2, or 3 different program activities in the morning. And then we're going to come back, wash our hands, eat lunch, have a little bit of a break in our campsite, take a nap, whatever it might be, and then start another 2 or 3 rotations worth of program. This time we're going to go to swimming, maybe we're going to go shooting, and then we're going to go to the escape room campsite activity. All right. So, and then we'll have dinner, and then after dinner will be another rotation, and then we'll have campsite time where we can build a fire, and there may be some things that we can check out to do. Maybe if you're at Meriwether, you can check out to go to the beach. Maybe you'll be able to check out to go on a patrol camp out. Maybe you'll be able to check out to go to another thing. Right. And then at some point you get back at your campsite and you go to bed. Next day, lather, rinse, repeat. All right. So that's, I want to kind of give you an idea as to what that might look like. All right, so I'm going to go up to the top of the unanswered questions here, and I'm going to get to, let's see, hold on a second here.
There are quite a few tied with some new, and some of them aren't answered because it's like too much nuance for a quick.
That's fine.
Answer.
I'm going to jump through these. So our guidelines are currently not tied to county risk levels. Our guidelines are outside of that. Our cohort sizes are locked. Frankly, just because you can look it up and tell yourself, this county has much higher number of people they're allowed to put in a cohort than our COVID task force was comfortable putting it in. So we think it's safer to have smaller cohorts than much larger cohorts. And so, but the cohort sizes are not tied to, and there's nothing really tied at our camps for county risk level things. If we were doing some certain sport activities and other kind of in-person things that you can do, there's some activities that are tied to that, not cohort size. So let's see. How will groups work for Cubs? They're bringing both boys and girls. We do not have the same. We're not going to force different cohorts for boys and girls if you're in the same group. We're comfortable at Cub Scout camps having you interact. We're more importantly, first we want to make sure that you're, by your unit, and then we'll worry about gender. So we want to try to keep your units together best as possible, and that is based also on what our parents have been telling us. Let's see. So, Dennis, if you run into somebody that's sick with a cough and they have normal allergies, that is not considered a COVID symptom, and we'll talk about that more as we start talking about the screening. When we ask you to do screening, that'll be part of that. Just want to let you know. Then when they talk about if you have just kind of a normal cough and things like that, based on allergies or things that you have, that's different, right? But what ends up happening is going to happen is you're going to show up and you're going to get a cold or something because you're not drinking enough water, getting enough sleep or whatever. So, and then that's going to put us into a question. Arrival requirements will be, we'll assign you an arrival time and then you will ask to be hit that arrival time. The arrival time will be by cohort, but I mean, if you've got 3 cohorts and you're coming from out of town, we'll stack those up to each other, and you have the same the state says that you should try to follow the CDC guidelines for travel, which means you're supposed to arrive in any area and quarantine for 14 days. If you can do that, that's great. But we're just asking you to behavioral quarantine before you come and do your level best to arrive healthy. So we don't have any other guidelines for people coming from out of council versus people coming from inside council. Frank, I hope I answered your question. When you arrive at an area, you will be given a staff member, and your cohort will all work with those staff members on the requirements that will be offered in that area together. And again, a scout is not going to sit there and go through a lecture on the requirements. A scout will have will be using worksheets or whatnot to answer all those questions, and the scout and the staff member would say, okay, here, read through this and you'll get all the answers. Right? And when you're done, we'll discuss it, right? As opposed to, here, let me teach you everything you need to know about this merit badge. Vince Bishop, good question. I'll need to talk with you about weekend district and council events, overnight camping. The short answer is yes. However, there are some nuances that we'll need to talk about with regard to overnight camping for in-council events. So Camp Pioneers wilderness hiking trails will be a thing, but they need to ensure social distance from things. But we don't want you to leave camp, like drive to Tillamook to go to the ice cream factory or something like that, right? So we want you to do your best to stay in camp and go to the places that we've identified as safe. And Steve, most definitely we want chaplains, and we want them socially distant. We want them vaccinated whenever possible. Oh, Heather, I'm getting to that. We're shooting for the May 15th for your handbook. That will have more information. Okay, a couple more questions here real quick. 17-year-olds and 12-year-olds going to camp. The 17-year-olds cannot, all of our sleeping places for the most part are basically like tents with 2 people. So you have to maintain the age break between ages. And if that means that you have to put a youth in a mini DAC or a tent by themselves, then that's what you have to do. We will conduct swim tests at camp. All right, I'm going to answer the next 3 questions and then save some for later. Again, Frank Pratt, all your questions be answered in on the 15th, but we will not be doing pre-registration for merit badges. We will be providing a full list of merit badge officering on the 15th. And Trail the First class will happen, for the most part, every time you go into an area where you can learn Trail the First class stuff, you'll be able to do that. However, you as a scout leader should be also doing that stuff in the campsites as well, as far as your should plan for some of that opportunity when you're also just in your campsite. So helping out with knots and going over various parts. The question about vaccinated people being able to leave and come back to take care of work issues. I'm waiting to hear back from the county on that one. So I don't have an answer for that yet. Currently, the answer is no. But if we believe that we can do that and ensure that people are participating in low risk activity with no contact with others, then we can change that as far as that goes. Last question before I move on, and then we'll get to the rest later. Yeah, one cohort goes to one area, and they can do simple different merit badges, but they're with the same counselor. Again, I'm reminding you that it's not that they're going to go through a merit badge class. The merit badge counselor is going to guide them through how to complete all the activities. They're not going to instruct them on the fine arts of weather, right? They're going to say, here's where you get the information about weather. Here's a weather merit badge handbook. And here is a couple other resources that you could have to look at, and feel free to answer the questions on the worksheet. If you have any questions, raise your hand and I'll answer them. All right, I'm gonna move on to the Cub Scout side now. So let's go to Cub Scouts now. All right, Cub Scout activity experience. There are two schedules. Imagine two schedules where, you know, so you're part of my schedule. Part will go to an activity in 34 minutes later than the other part. So I get up a little earlier, do my own flag, and I go eat. Somebody gets to sleep in a little bit, then they do flag, and then they go eat, and then I start my program, and then the people start. So imagine that you kind of have two camps within a camp, interacting and doing activities, but every camp cohort's the same, 10 or 12 scouts plus adults wandering around areas doing activities. And we'll talk about that. So Camp Dan will arrive in an area, a staff will direct the program, but the adults will help the Cubs, right? So I'm sitting there going, okay, here are all of you, here are your materials, and here's all your stuff, all right? And here's the first step, all right? And the adults help the kids. And here's the second step, and the adults will help the kids. You know, our camp staff need to do their level best to not have any close contact with any campers, because if a camp staff member gets sick, it's much more problematic than if a individual at camp gets sick.
Can I highlight for just a second?
Yeah.
On that, close contact is a really specific term. It doesn't mean you're never. What it does mean is that 15 minutes over the course of a day within that person's 6-foot bubble. So that's what close contact is. Everybody is supposed to stay 6 feet apart at all times throughout the day, inside the cohorts, outside the cohorts, between the cohorts, all that. But the staff in particular are limited with how close and how long they can be up close and personal with our campers, which is, and that's the way to keep them from becoming ill. So that close contact is that specific term.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't be in proximity to people. It just means that you can't have more than 15 minutes of within a 6-foot bubble over a 24-hour period. So, yeah. Okay, and there may be some sign-up program today that may be able. So in the afternoon, there may be an open time, and our Camp Dan can sign up to go, let's say, to the beach, or go to the archery range, or go do a craft or some sort of activity. We haven't just, I'm not exactly sure where we've landed on that, but, and again, and campfires and evening activities and campsites each night. So we may have an after dinner activity rotation or some sort of activity, and then you'll end up back in your campsite where you can have your own campfire and interaction, put the kids to bed, and you're good to go. So that's kind of what it looks like. Let's go ahead and go to the next one and kind of give a little bit. This is straight off the drawing room floor at Butte Creek. Again, notice my little caution work in progress. This was handed to me yesterday, which means it's in the midst of development. So I just kind of know that. But here's an example of a day activity, a day in the life of Butte Creek. You know, your cohort may get assigned to go help feed the livestock, and then you got morning flag, and then breakfast. And again, this is maybe part A. I don't know. Then you have some sort of thing that you need to keep through. Maybe we need to sanitize your outhouse, or I don't know. I'm not sure what the morning chores are going to be. Then you got station time and rotations. Let's say that those are 45 minutes apart through the various activities. And then homestead is basically your cohort. And then you have dinner, which is they call it their lunch. And then we'll have basically bob time or rest time before or after dinner. And then you'll have station activities in the afternoon, and then you'll go into dinner, and then have flag in your campsite. And then you'll have some evening activity, and then hang out with campfire in your in your campsite, and then bedtime. And here's kind of a list of activities of various of the standards that you can do. But it's, again, a lot of their programs not going to look different. It's just you're not going to have as much as the camp-wide activities that we had before and independent activities. All right, next slide. All right, Camp Clark has got a castaway theme, so they're gonna have I guess I got 2 breakfasts in there. So imagine they have 2 different rotations. You go breakfast and then and campsite flag, or you might have campsite flag and breakfast depending on where you're at, and then program rotation, and then and then you have lunch, bob time, which is rest time, and then you're going to go to afternoon programming, and then an open program where you're going to be able to sign up for an activity that you guys get to do that you want to do. And then they figured out how to do a cohort sandcastle contest that they'll be working on in the evening. Then you go back to your campsite for a campfire and you're done. And they have gotten to the point where open activities, you can see that they're looking at a BB archery, slingshot, tide pool, compass, spikes, woodworking, cooking, fire starters, fighting. Those are the open activities. And rotation is going to be fire making, leatherwork, wood carving, cooking, shelter building, first aid, pioneering, knife safety, orienteering, nature, BB archery. So these are some of the things that they'll be able to do. Obviously, tear down to the age level for the kids. All right. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea as to, again, a little bit into the drawing room floor as to where we're at there. Next slide. Let's see, I only got a couple more slides here, so I might just go ahead and bring us on home and then just hang out and answer questions for people that want to continue to hang out. So, one, I want to make sure that if you and your people aren't getting emails from us at least once a month, then you are not on our list. And so there's a camp contact form that we have, and we that make sure that we send out that information. Also, you can make sure that you update Inside Tenaroo under your profile, making sure that the right people are getting contacted in there. Our system just recently updated, so you can add a contact per reservation. So let's say that I'm the committee chairman for the Cub Scout pack. I can add a den leader to every registration that's going to that's signed up for camp, right? So every activity you can cite. Let's say you're a troop and you're and you have the scout master and the committee chairman are the main contacts, but your outdoor chair is in charge of summer camp. You want them to get all the information. You can assign them to the summer camp activity as being the primary contact. Again, so at this point, you should be making sure that people are paying, and share the information that we're sharing here with you today. Again, make sure you're attending the webinars. We're going to give you a schedule of some things that are happening. Again, if there's any special needs, or if you need to do scholarship applications, we have camp scholarships still available. Make sure that we get those turned in for in-council people. Again, we're still looking for people to serve on camp staff. And again, if you can get vaccinated, I highly recommend you do. Personally, I think it's as a scientist by nature, I fully embrace the importance of the vaccination program. I understand that it's hard for some people to choose that, but I would implore you to at least get as educated as you possibly can on the importance of vaccination and why you're choosing not to, and be okay with that. And again, we already talked about the making sure for a plan for what you can do for out of council. Again, I'm not sure if there's going to be any travel restrictions. I doubt it, frankly. But obviously, they're going to ask you the same questions we're going to. Again, if you're more than 250 miles away, you can stay the night before. Otherwise, you can't. So if we find out that you live in West Lynn and you're trying to get to Meriwether the night before, we're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to say, I'm sorry, you need to arrive on Saturday, because we want to limit the potential contact with our camp staff as well. And also, remember, our camp staff get a very short time off, and every time, and we try to minimize the need to have them interact with others during their weekend anyway, so they can get a break. Next slide. This is a change. I understand as I go into this may be pretty frustration, and you may feel a sense of anger or loss, frustration, sadness, because we've changed our policy after the deadline. And there's a reason for that. And we understand that some people will be put off by what I'm about to say. And for that, we're deeply sorry. If we could have done it differently, we would. But to make sure that we can operate camp safely and effectively within the time period that we have and the restrictions we have, we've gone to this. The deadline for paying in full for that incentive is been moved from May 1st to June 1st. So all of you that worked your butt off to pay by May 1st so you can get free t-shirts, which was what was the plan, you have another month. If you couldn't do it before May 1st, you have until June 1st. If you pay in full, you're going to get a special swag bag that's going to have stuff in it, as opposed to a t-shirt. Okay. Inside the swag bag will be a gift certificate for the trading post that you can use for whatever you want. It won't fully pay for a shirt. It probably won't fully pay for a knife. It won't fully pay for a hat, but it will allow you a discounted price for those things that you can live, in addition to other things that will be in there. Like you probably expect that you'll get a mask and your probably some hand sanitizer and some other keepsakes that we're going to put in there. And so kind of look forward to that. And we chose this tactic because we wanted to extend the deadline to provide more flexibility. And because we've had to make all these decisions so late, the logistics of making sure that we can get the right shirts ordered and the right sizes to you by the time that we got to camp would impede our ability to put together a safe and quality camp experience. And so because it's literally a bandwidth issue and a timing issue, so we've gone to the swag bags. And if this puts you out in any way, we understand that there may be some frustration here, but we've made that change for that reason. All right, next. All right, go ahead. You need to keep up to date. Mid-month emails will still be coming out. Make sure if you're not getting them, check your spam. We're looking for pre-camp leader meetings Tuesday, June 1st in the evening. You'll get to meet your management team and questions and camp-specific programming. And so if you are going to be going to more than one camp or activity and you feel like you need to do that, just make sure you've got somebody to go to more than one of these. We'll have a general session and then you'll be able to break out into your camp sections. And then we're going to, and then if you have anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, I go to next slide. Again, I'm going to race through this next two in here, and then we're going to, and I want to make sure I get through every question. And I'll hang out until every question's answered, I promise you. If you have to leave and just, email me, todd.mcdonald@scouting.org. Send me an email right now and I'll get it to it before I go to bed tonight for sure.
Hey, Todd, I've been kind of collating these into groupings. Can I send them your way and we'll get 3 or 4 with each question?
That sounds great. Or if you want to just ask me them and then I can answer them when it comes time. Again, so I'm going to talk about that we are going to be able to operate camp and we can do them safely with COVID mitigation measures in place. And by mid-May, you're going to be able to have program guides and essential things for you to plan, like schedules and program offerings and confirm merit badges and all the like will be to you that you can hold on to and plan. Camps will look very different and that's okay. All right. And we'll try to maintain lines of communication. But we'd like to make sure that you have a trust and partnership for our scouts moving forward. Go ahead and move to the next slide when we get into questions. I want to go back really quickly to the merit badge questions that I'm sure that is in a lot of these, Chris. And the ability for us to offer a variety of programs utilizing the cohort process and to make sure that the safety and security of our staff means that we need to trust that you as an adult leader will prepare your scouts to be able to work independently and to be able to do their best to work on those merit badges on their own. That doesn't mean that we're going to completely leave it to themselves. We're going to be able to, we're going to guide them. We're going to answer their question. But instead of handing them the plate, we're giving them the eggs and the bacon and a hot stove. Right? And so if they're going to want that omelet, they're going to need to make it themselves, but we're going to give them the stuff. And that's the big difference in what you're used to. However, it is how merit badges are squared away. And there's good news. The good news about that is that some people, scouts, will be able to buy into this, come to you as a scout leader and say, hey, listen, I'd like to earn these 5 merit badges at camp or 6 merit badges at camp, right? And you're going to say, okay, well, print off the worksheets and answer all the questions best you can. And we'll work it out to ensure that you can get as many requirements completed while you're at camp with the staff that are there. And ahead of time, you reach out and say, hey, listen, we're looking at, we have a scout that wants to earn, let's say, citizenship in a community while they're at camp. How can we do that? Well, let's work it out. Right? Let us give it a chance to be a hero. Right? Let's figure out how to get that public meeting done or whatever it's going to be. And so we'll have to kind of work a little bit harder to do that. And you as an adult leader, the idea of you working with the scouts and hanging out in the campsite while they are out during the program is also kind of a thing you need to understand, that you'll need to be with them while they're rotating around doing stuff. And so it's just something to be prepared on. So, Chris, go ahead. Go ahead and hit me with the big ones.
Well, and piggybacking a little on your merit badge one for a second, just our staff are there and they're there to teach that, right? But they're also, I think it's a nuance again. It's between, are you going to sit down and hear somebody talk to you for an hour, or are you going to come in with an attitude of I'm working my way toward this merit badge. I'm going to ask my staff to help me with the parts of the kayak, the parts of the saddle. I didn't quite get it's more of a initiating the learning versus having it downloaded or dumped. Does that make sense? So that familiarity that Todd talked about is exactly the point for that. And really, it's the design of the merit badge program. It's what we're supposed to be doing. So,
okay. Chris Bartell, could you just switch to the other slide? That way, if people need to leave, they'll have our contact information, and we'll just hang on and answer every question until we feel that we've got it done.
Okay. One more point. This is some of the questions talk about the differing views, opinions, judgments about COVID and how it affects people and camps and what we can and can't do and rules between states and that sort of thing. I guess I want to take just a moment to be very clear about we're beholden to the state and to our scouts to create a risk tolerance of a certain amount. And we are guided by not just the guidelines of our state, but by our COVID task force. We want to be cautious that camp is not the place to debate what is the face mask going to go over my nose or under my nose. That kind of stuff just needs to stay. You're better off not coming to camp. I just have to say that part, because our staff, we don't want to put a 16-year-old in a position of having an argument about what the proper COVID responses are. If you are too uncomfortable with the COVID responses, in terms of the mitigation measures, have a conversation ahead of camp to make sure it's a great plan still to come. We're doing the best we can within those guidelines that we've been handed. And in our case, a scout is obedient, and we're finding ourselves in a position of needing to build that box within which camp can operate, and we can get our kids outside and having some adventures. That's a challenge. So anyway, I'll stop there. But so sleeping arrangements, Todd, multiple questions about that. Share. I know you've addressed some, but shared tents, who can share, who can't share.
Thank you. You know what, we did leave that off the slide, and I appreciate that becoming a question. So pretty much all of our sleeping areas, I think for the most part, except for a couple,
are 2-person occupancy. Regardless, if you're in, let's say you have a 6-person Adirondack, you would have to stay in that Adirondack by cohort anyway. So, and the rule is you got to sleep with your head basically 6 feet away from the other person. And so that basically happens by, sleeping head to toe. If you're in bunks, that, head to toe, and, and so that's the guideline. When you're in your, the idea is that whenever you're indoors, you're supposed to wear your mask, except for when you're sleeping. So for the most part, the most safest mitigation measure would be, I go in my campsite and I get undressed to go sleep, and then I crawl in bed and take off my mask. Would be kind of how that would look. Now I know kids are going to be less than that, but we're going to push towards the greatest thing and do our best to within the mitigations. Again, if we push our mitigations here and people fall here, we tend to be better off than if we, lighten the bar. Oh, and just a reminder, the same youth protection guidelines still apply, right? You can't have people stay in the same tent that are distant in age. You can't have adults in Scout BSA stay with even if their own child in a tent together. However, in Cub Scouts, you can stay in a tent with your parent or sibling.
Can you review, Todd, the daily med check? And there was a question specifically about, so what if someone's just kind of feeling yucky and all that kind of stuff? And how is that handled? The question was, do they just kind of chill out in their tent, or what do they do?
We don't want anybody sick participating in the program. So, and again, if someone, listen, I grew up and you went to school sick, right? Yeah, you had to be, puking or dying if you did to not go to school. And so, we're not going to have that mentality here. If someone's not feeling well, you as an adult leader need to look at it for what it is and make that thing. And you can say, he woke up and his stomach's a little sore. I think he's just this happens to him, whenever we go camping. All right, well, make a decision, right? Do you normally let him go participate in the program, or her when because some kids just have anxiety and their stomachs get a little upset. If that's normal behavior for the child and for you, right, then, make a decision on that. However, if that person wakes up and says, you know what, I can't say anything in my tongue. I'm feeling weird. And you sit there and go, why don't you go back in your tent and let's check this out, right? We're going to, or if I take a temperature and they're sitting there kind of going, it's 99.5. Oh, dang it. Well, why don't you go lay down? You can't participate in the program right now. I'm going to forward the camp, and we're going to decide what we're going to do, and we're going to execute the sickness protocol. Hopefully that answers the question. A lot of this will be, hey, listen, someone's not sick, let us know, and we'll work together to ensure that we're being safe. If somebody's nose is running, well, that might be different than, again, somebody with a 100-degree temperature no longer can taste.
Good. Another question here, Todd, about, and multiple questions actually about, so we've got multiple dens wanting to come to like the same week or stuff, and maybe you're a parent with a child in 2 different age groups. And so, but one kid is in one cohort and another is in another cohort. How are any recommendations to parents of how they might navigate that issue with their own child in camp?
Assign the older kid to a parent you trust.
Because the cohorts do stay separate.
Assign the older kid to the parent you trust, or keep them together. So, I mean, that's what we're gonna do. You cannot mix cohorts while you're at camp. And so we have to, and that comes from the standpoint of ensuring, and I understand, arrival and all that stuff. And some of this stuff seems so silly, but it's the principle of how we do things that will help us. Because some of the stuff that we have to do is being able to assure the health department that we are serious about this and that our plans are enough to be able to warrant maintaining our own level of control when something happens. And so we have to make sure that we stick to our principles and guidelines best we can, knowing that not everything's perfect. And we're going to run into weird stuff all the time.
Related to that question, Todd, about switching leaders or youth arriving late or leaving early and those kind of things.
Chris, help me with this. I do believe as long as behavioral quarantine happened, we will allow you to come later with all the same pieces. Just remember that you have to be assigned to that cohort, and that cohort must be, you're part of that cohort, and everybody in that cohort is aware that this is happening. And as far as an adult is concerned, if you need to switch out of adult for coverage, that is fine. I just again, you're creating more riskier. We would prefer that you didn't do that, but if you have to, feel free to do that. I mean, there's a system that allows you to do that.
And thinking about why is the child arriving late in particular? If the child's arriving late for camp, if they're been in a little league tournament with 12 other teams for the last week, and then they're going to come a couple of days late to camp, well, they haven't pre-quarantined. So I would say choose, please, because we don't want to. I mean, we're trustworthy, right? We're all saying we're following these rules together to hope to keep our camps open and running and active all summer long. Let's see. Also, in changing leaders, communication with the camp is key. It's kind of common sometimes for a leader to show up at camp in the parking lot and go find their troop, and it's a day later when the camp finds out that leader is in camp. In this case, that won't work. We need to know when you're coming so we can get you checked in and go through all our procedures, because it's just part of the trip this year of the switching out of the leaders. Who's left? Who's here? Why is that person not showing up on the daily log anymore? We're all trying to avoid surprises, I believe. Okay, let's see. I think. Units that come. So I think just a little more clarity, Todd, on multiple. So if you've got dens or troops with smaller numbers, 3 people, 4 people in scouts in the cohort, just clarity about how they're combined into a camp cohort or a camp den for their trip, and just a little more clarity about that.
Yeah. So I mean, it is. At some point, you can't. You have to have a kind of a minimum cohort size to be able to operate. Otherwise, I mean, 50 cohorts. You just can't put a rotation schedule together, right? That's going to work. And so, at a Cub Scout camp. So at some point, you're going to have to mix people who don't know each other necessarily ahead of time into one group. That doesn't mean that those people have to have close contact. That just means you're going to participate together in the program, and it's up to you to determine the level in which you interact with them outside of that. We understand that people within a cohort will probably have closer interaction than people outside of it, even though we are going to do our level best to keep them masked and 6 feet and all that stuff. But that has to be up to the preference of the people that are inside that cohort. We want to do our level best to ensure that nobody is exposed to anybody, and if you are, that you have a very low chance of contracting it. So yes, if you arrive and you only got a couple people or some sort of weird odd number, it is possible that you will be in a camp den or a camp cohort, if Scout BSA, with people outside of your unit. Hopefully you'll know that ahead of time. That's my wish. It's not going to be a surprise to you.
Internet and Wi-Fi use. I can speak to this briefly. Basically, all our camps have very limited internet. And part of the thing is these scouts have been online all year, so that's the minor consideration. The major consideration is most of these camps are so remote. There's just little to no internet even available to run the business side of camp. Um, so scouts using the internet at camp to work on their merit badges and to do their research and that sort of thing is not really, that wouldn't be a really tenable situation. That wouldn't be a real workable one.
Yeah, I would say that if you were to take your cell phone, in most cases, down to the ocean at Meriwether, likelihood of you being able to find an internet signal using your data is possible. But I wouldn't bank on really any camp at this stage. If we can offer it, we will, but I wouldn't plan on it.
Let me see. I'm trying to think what other things. There's been some coming in through Facebook too. Chris Bartel, are you in a spot to be able to share a couple of those?
Yeah, I just threw one in there. Let's see here into the chat here to you guys. Can you please speak to scouts and girl-boy cohorts? How do you cohort a brother and sister, for instance? We have 3 brother-sister groups and our 2 different troops.
So this is going to be one of those situations where, you know, a safer activity would be to have, you know, them, you know, siblings, you know, in the same cohort, and that works fine for Cub Scouts, not so well for Scout BSA. So my recommendation is that you just go ahead and have them travel separately and be in that cohort for that week and interact that way best you can. We'll do our level best to put gender-based cohorts together, mainly because of the need for female adult supervision for every female cohort. So, and so we'll do our level best to try to meet that.
The other thing, there were just some great suggestions, actually, people talking on Facebook just about this pre-planning, especially for merit badges, is, you know, with kids with disabilities or whatnot, and some really great suggestions that unit leaders and parents just really need to work with a lot of these kids beforehand, and that we'll have a list of all the merit badges available. And we had also talked about, here was a question, is will there be a list of not just merit badges, but those requirements that will not be fulfilled at camp, and will we make that available?
What was that last question? You kind of cut out there.
No, sorry about that. Will there be a list of not just the merit badges, but the requirements that need to be fulfilled?
So understand that, yeah, that there's some stuff that you can't do at camp. But there's nothing a scout can't do. Right now, for instance, there's some requirements you'll notice that have a period of time of 60 to 90 days to complete the merit badge. So they can either start or finish it at camp, but they can't necessarily, you know, do those requirements at camp. And astronomy is a good one, right? You got to chart the phases of the moon over a period of time, and you just can't do that at camp because you need more than a week of camp to do that. And so I'm excited to see what happens when you put kids in charge of their own stuff. Some of your guys are going to need, especially your younger ones, may need a little extra help, right? My guess is mom and dad are going to be right there to help them. But really, if you identify now, literally right now, what merit badges you want them to get, knowing that, you know, or May 15th, what merit badges they are, and start printing off those worksheets and handing them a merit badge handbook if you've got them, or they can just find that information online to answer all the knowledge-based questions that are just readily available there, right? You know, what's the definition of a mammal? Google, what's the definition of a mammal? Oh, hey, and I just write that down and I'm ready to go, right? A lot of that stuff they can do ahead of time. You know, scouts, what are the 8 points of the state swim defense? Well, I'll look that up. Hey, there it is. I'll write them down, right? And so, and a lot of that they can just do on their own. And if you need to help them with that, that's fine. They don't need a merit badge class to do that stuff. What they need is to learn how to do a J-stroke. What they need to do is show that they can swim the crawl, right? They need to know that they can, do a conservation project, or do certain of these experiments, or shoot as many targets as they can within the right caliber. That's what they need to do. They don't need to be able to identify the parts of the gun in a class when you have a limited period of time. They can do that ahead of time. And that's the point of what I'm trying to say. You're limited to the things that you really want to get done that you can't do anywhere else at camp. And we want you to do everything else ahead of time or on your
own. There was another question as to whether or not we knew where to get a good deal on these rapid tests.
I think what you do is you wait until about May 30th. The prices will come down as more and more of these get developed. They're making more and more all the time. I know for us, our plan is to buy them in bulk. And so for us, it's going to end up costing us about $10 a test. Last I looked, the kits that are available come with 2 tests per kit. And it's about $25 per kit. And so I don't know what happens if you buy them in greater quantity. Yes, we will accept a swim test ahead of time unless the water is particularly cold. If for some reason we feel the water is cold, we'll retest you because we need to know that you can maintain the swim test in a cold lake. Because people who can swim in a nice warm pool can often not swim a swim test in a cold lake. And let's remind you that our kids probably have less fitness than they did a year and a half ago. So things like hiking and swimming and things like that may be harder because they don't have the regular physical activity that they might have had previously. So let's be prepared to know that they're going to get wiped out much quicker. Again, I keep seeing in here questions in here about cohorts needing to all take the same merit badge, and that is not the case, right? They just need to be prepared. Every scout needs to be prepared to complete the merit badge requirements on their own or with a buddy. But it doesn't mean that they need to do it. Everybody needs to show up to nature and only do environmental science. All right, what else we got?
I just threw a couple more into our panelists chat here.
I'm way, in fact, oh, here we go.
Sorry, they're just the fresh ones down there at the bottom. You should see them there.
If you're going to do your own swim test prior to camp, again, I want to remind you that Pioneer and sometimes Meriwether's Lake gets below 70 degrees. And Baldwin's is typically warmer than that. And so when you get in water under 70 degrees and you're not used to that, you're going to need to be retested, right? And that's by the way, the aquatics director has the right to retest anybody at any time and has a requirement to do so. So some of that can be done ahead of time. And again, for some of that stuff, but you should do it a month or so prior to coming to camp if you're going to do your own swim tests.
A couple questions I can answer here. One is about who's choosing the cohorts. Remember that the cohort is traveling from the time you leave town to the time you return home together. So the transportation, all of it, they're their own little mob. I'm reminded of the old Monty Python graphics where there's a little group of people all going to one spot, to the next spot. And that's essentially summer camp in many ways. That's kind of the cohort model, is they are going together. So there was a question about, well, what if we've got enough leaders and some want to go to one activity area and others want to go to another activity area? Your program this summer it's on a schedule. It'll be, your cohort will be assigned, you're at nature from 10 to 11:30 or whichever block, however they're blocking that. So that's that cohort's opportunity to be at nature, to be at whichever area. So the cohort goes together everywhere. So if somebody wants to go off onto a different area, they can't. There's another cohort there. That said, let's say you've got that older kid, younger kid breakdown in a cohort and enough leaders. So there's two preconditions and that's all in place. And say some of the older kids and a couple of the adults want to go from the same cohort, want to go on a hike. They could do that because you're not going to the program area. That's fine. If you're married there, want to go spend some extra time on the beach, and the younger kids just want to go play on the beach for a while, and you've got enough adult leadership, members of that cohort could potentially go in a couple different directions. But the goal, I mean, the main idea is the norm will be the cohort moves everywhere together with adult leadership present. So there's that.
There's a question here about, separating your TTFC kids from your non-TTFC.
Which is trail to first
trail
class.
to first class, right?
Yeah.
And, I guess it's up to you. I mean, it would make sense that if you have a younger scout patrol, to have them rotate around, and an older scout patrol roam around together. But it's okay to mix them too, in a cohort. Let's see. So the Cub Scout camp payment deadline for the $100 is June 1st. I don't know if that got mentioned. All right. I don't know about cooking. We got a typed answer. I'm sorry.
There was a dining hall question about that, and I think there was something specific to Meriwether. But any camp with a dining hall, they are still finalizing their plans at this point. It may be that your meals are delivered to your campsite to eat. The state guideline is that everybody's got to be 6 feet apart in the dining hall. So we're trying to figure out how to maximize the program time and if the dining hall is sufficient for shift feeding and for multiple how many people. We've literally calculated the square footage on each dining hall and created an optimum situation of what would the new capacity of the dining hall be based on that thing. And that often that number is less than the bodies who will be in camp at the time, even though we've held back our capacity of each camp. One other little point here tied to program. Picture your normal merit badge classes. I mean, it's not normal. We've already said that 100 times, but they can be 40, 50 kids at some of our camps. This year, there's going to be no merit badge class that should be bigger than 10 or 12 kids. You get your own person and that personal attention. As a former teacher, I can tell you I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to give kids education, learning, growth in that smaller group setting versus the 40, 50 kid class. Think of the quality difference in that, being attentive to 50 kids versus being attentive to 10 or 12. So it's actually, there are some benefits in it. It's definitely different, but there's some benefits here.
Okay, let's see. It says each family needs to drive separately. Not if we assign them to the same cohort, then they can just be in the same cohort. For those, your cohort does not have to be just 10. It could be probably anywhere between 8 and 12, and we'll work with you ahead of time to figure that out. That logistic, we don't know for certain. We just know that we need to have that conversation ahead of you. So as you're looking at how many people you're coming and you see that we're trying to keep people to cohorts of 10 or 12, that come prepared to tell us what you want, and we're probably more likely to stick with that. And again, I think that that's a couple questions about when will cohorts be decided. Well, that's a thing that we'll be working on. As a scoutmaster, anybody that wants to visit, Greg, this is a good question. Can a scoutmaster visit another cohort And I think that there'll be some situations for that, but you want to over exaggerate your social distancing, and you must always wear a mask. Right? You cannot mix with the cohorts. So you kind of have to pick a cohort and stick with them. But if you need to help or assist, you can do so, but you want to assure that you do not mix. Again, I think we've answered that question for Donna about will they be if you're bringing less than 10 scouts, will you be assigned to a bag? So or assigned to another group will be assigned to you. So the swag bag is going to be, we're looking at potentially trying to get a donor to help us with some of the swag bag stuff so that we can offer a mask and a sticker and a sanitizer to everybody that comes. So we're working on that so that everybody may get something, but the swag bag that you get as an incentive will definitely be beefier and have more stuff in it than including the coupon for the trading post. Let's see. All right, I am getting down here. Do we sign up and confirm merit badges before camp? No. There will be no merit badge sign up prior to arrival. If you are working on a merit badge that's not on our list and you would like to utilize resources to help that scout with that merit badge, let us know about those ahead of camp so we can try to work out solutions for you. But for the most part, you will arrive to your area and the staff there will be ready to counsel you on the merit badges that from the menu that we choose. And so you may show up into a nature area, and nature area may have 3 different cohorts there, but each cohort will be assigned their own staff member at their own space who will be their staff member for that time. Okay, I'm looking here. I should mention to everybody, and Chris, we're going to probably get this out in the FAQs. Somebody reminded me from our risk management that our risk management some time ago did not, because our lakes are cold, has not accepted pre-swim tests because of the nature that we have kids coming from places that just are not used to this cold water, and they jump in the water and nearly drowned on the swim test that we offer. And so we need to test their ability in our conditions to ensure that they can be safe, and so that they know what they're getting into. How will it be handled at Butte Creek with mixed age cohorts? I guess we did answer that one. We're going to do our level best to be able to handle cohorts as we get them. And so if you arrive in an area and it's BB time, and you're going to be doing more difficult things than the younger scouts for BBs. If we arrive in an area and we're working on a woodcraft, or your woodcraft may be slightly different and harder, so that you can fulfill your requirements where, so we're working on that, but I don't think that we are going to make you split your dens up into age specific groups unless you come that way. So, all right, I am thinking that I am getting more or less.
There was one question about workbooks for merit badges. Do they need to provide them? Sort of the best way.
Yeah, they'll need to provide. I mean, obviously we'll sell some stuff, but you can print off a worksheet for any merit badge online. So type in, let's say it's environmental science. Go into Google right now and type in environmental science merit badge worksheet. And a PDF will come right up, and you can print that out, and you can have all the requirements there and answer all those requirements. And the scout could just literally walk up into the area, right? Sign it off, have it signed, and sit there and say, okay, very good. I'm going to go over this with you here in a minute. But then I'm going to mark off every requirement that you completed on there after a short little discussion with you, right? And so and say, okay, well, here's the requirements you have left. Well, let's see about getting those taken care of. Some of those you're going to have to do on your own, and I'll explain to you how, and some of them I'm going to have to do with you. Well, if you need help from parents driving to and from camp, that is acceptable. Please make sure that you screen the parents as well. If the parent has been infected or near somebody exposed to somebody who was infected, then they should not drive kids to camp. But you know, just use your best judgment there. All right.
Someone asked if horse riding will be allowed at Duke Creek. What's happening at Duke Creek?
Yes, we're going to be doing horse riding at both. I'm not exactly sure the logistics between what we're going to allow Webelos to do versus what we're going to allow Cub Scouts to do. That has not come to me yet. As far as that, it just says horse riding in the schedule. I'm hoping that you'll get that information when it comes to the mid-month guidelines that are come out. So as far as high adventure activities, we're not doing whitewater rafting, climbing, windsurfing at any camp. We're not doing it, or sea kayaking. All right, so just to let you know, those activities are not happening, but we are doing mountain biking, mountain boarding, you know, swimming, other activities, and then there will be some opportunity potentially for your cohort to sign up to do things that may be more high adventure based than not, but we haven't quite nailed all that down. And again, the question is, will there be early registration to allow for high adventure activity? If you would like to do rafting or sea kayaking or some of these activities after your session, we don't want you doing before session because you could have close contact with people. But if you do want to do it after your summer camp session, and you would like us to help get you set up with our vendors, maybe even at our price level, we'd be happy to help you get set up there. So just reach out to the camp director of the camp that you're attending. See, Rick has answered. I mean, it's a question that we've answered before, but we want the troops to tell us what you want to do for your cohorts. We want you to convey that to us. That logistic hasn't been completely figured out, but you can spend time identifying that, hey, listen, we're bringing 20 kids. We're going to have 2 cohorts of 10, and here's who's going to be in each cohort. You let us know, and we say, great, we're done. You know, if you're bringing like 13, then we have to figure out, oh my gosh, well, that's 6 and 5, or do you do 10 and put 3 in another cohort within their unit? That will be a discussion we'll have to have. 13 is we probably would do a cohort of 13, but we may not do a cohort of 14. We might split that to 2 groups of 7. I don't know. I really don't know how we're going to do those decisions, but will be a discussion that we have to ensure safety. And again, I'm meeting with our health departments on Friday, which will give us, again, a slightly more idea as to what they're going to expect from us, as because they'll actually answer my questions as opposed to the Department of Health for the state. Okay. All right. On here, I want to point out here, todd.mcdonald@scouting.org, chris.harold@scouting.org, 492.volunteerservices@scouting.org, 492.camping@scouting.org. All of those places get your questions answered. And then if you want to reach out to your camp, their email addresses are the name of the camp at bsa.camp. That's their email address. Meriwether@bsa.camp, Baldwin @bsa.camp, Pioneer @bsa.camp, Butte Creek, one word, @bsa.camp, Clark @bsa.camp, and you'll have access to your camp directors. So feel free to email them. Some of these things, I mean, remember, they don't have all the answers today. And they're working really hard to get all the most of the answers by mid-month and into a published form. So just want to let you know that you may want to hang out and just ask Chris and myself more questions until mid-month. And then the minute that you get that program guide, then let loose on those camp directors. Go get them.
And we are getting questions about the webinar. It will be posted. We will post this. It's going to take a little while to render this out, but we will put it on the website at cpc.org/webinars. And also,
Chris, your audio is cut out. I'm sorry. I don't know why it happens from time to time. But yeah, the webinar is going to be available. I do believe did you put it's going to be on our website. You have access to. And, oh, by the way, I just noticed in here, if you need a CPAP, we ask that you come prepared to have a charging unit to be able to, battery powered. We don't have electrical power to plug you in, so you need a battery in a thing, and we will help ensure that there's a place for you to charge that on a daily basis so that you can ensure that it works. All right, for that, thank you all very much. Again, don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions, and we'll do our level best to answer all questions that we can when we can. And again, I appreciate all that you do to make scouting happen. And again, if we're prepared and we share the filter that, hey, listen, we get to go play out in the woods. We're going to the beach. We're going to the mountains. We're going to, the forest to hang out for a week together. This is going to be great, right? And go with that expectation. I think you're going to find that, and you temper your expectations to what can be, not what used to be. I think you can find it's a lot of fun, and use your creativity and activities, and what do you want to bring to make it fun for yourselves. What challenge the scouts. Here's what you can expect. What are you going to do? Whoever has the most fun and stays the most safe wins, right? So again, we thank you so much. I know more than probably anybody that what we're expecting and the changes and being able to try to figure all this out and make camp work. We know that your parents and some of your scouts are struggling with trying to find value and be able to see the importance of what we're trying to accomplish. And you're doing your level best to support them, and I understand. And we, once again, I'll just end with, we know that camp's going to be different, but we're excited because some of the difference is going to make it even more special. And we, but based on our attitude, can turn this experience into maybe something that people will remember the rest of their lives. So thank you all very much. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great day.